Shannon was born July 6, 1989, to her parents Lisa and David Madill. She came into the family as a pint-sized firecracker, and her brothers Tyler and Brett and sister Erin adored her from the minute she came home. And how could they not? Shannon, from the very beginning, was a bundle of energy and fun and quirkiness, and most of all, a little actress. This love of acting and making people laugh and just all around outgoingness followed her. At Central Memorial High, where she attended, she was super active in the music and drama program. She could play just about any instrument she picked up and was always in the drama room. She was in the Calgary Stampede show band, and after high school continued doing anything in the arts she could, from stand-up to improv, stage and voice work, and any film roles, however small. In 2010, when she was 21, she went to a party of mutual friends and met Josh Burgess, who was just her opposite in personality. He was much more shy and quiet, and the balance of their personalities made them hit it off from the start. Josh loved her joyful and spunky nature, and she was calmed and brought down to earth by Josh's unflustered and zen attitude. Shannon faced a lot of rejection from auditions, and Josh was there for her as her rock. 4 years into their relationship, while planning their wedding, they both decided that a big, fancy, expensive wedding just wasn't their thing, and they instead got married by an officiant with only her parents and his in attendance as witnesses. Erin told Nancy Hicks of Crime Beat that they also agreed that they didn't want children between the two of them, and Josh and Shannon were open with their families that they had decided to keep the marriage open, but they remained head over heels for each other. It was just something that they decided that they would do to keep their marriage fresh. So let's not get our knickers in a knot over it. The family didn't have any problem with it because their communication was so open about it. And Josh was good with it, and so was Shannon. It was just something that worked for them. They both consented, and it wasn't a secret, and they often actually met each other's dating partners. After getting married, Josh got a job with the government doing administrative work, and Shannon traveled around often to Edmonton for auditions and for her work. They settled into a house on Spiller Road in the Ramsey area. So again, this arrangement worked for them, but when they hit a bumpy patch in 2014, they decided to close the marriage back up and work on it by being exclusive. But at the same time, Shannon's career was taking her more and more to Edmonton, and she was just struggling with, do I stay and work on this marriage or do I pursue my dream? And Josh was struggling with the do I stay exclusive or do I want it open? So they just kind of started avoiding each other a little bit more and more. It was pretty easy to do since Josh worked days and Shannon often worked either nights or out of town. And again, they were pretty open with each other. At least Shannon was with her sister Erin about the struggles that they were experiencing. They started to live kind of separate lives, but under the same roof. I think that they were thinking it was either just going to work itself out the way it was meant to. They would either move on from each other or they would start to reconnect. So they didn't actually separate from each other. Shannon made arrangements to meet her brother Brett at Stage West on November 30th, a local dinner theater, and she didn't show, which is not really a big deal. It was a bit annoying, but Shannon was known for being a bit ADHD, flaky at times, and probably forgot or got busy, forgot to call or something. And according to her dad on Crime Beat, he said, Shannon was a marvelous person and she had many things, but she was a bit flighty at times and she could, kind of forget things and not necessarily let people know. Her dad texted her right away saying something like, "Hey, where are you? You're supposed to be at dinner with Brett." And she didn't answer, so again, no big deal. Sometimes that's just Shannon. And the next morning, she still wasn't answering either her dad or her brother's calls, and they figured she was either maybe embarrassed about messing up or just didn't want to hear it. So they told Erin, and Erin figured she would try to call her because she wouldn't be expecting her to not answer her call. But she didn't. So later that night, the family's getting worried. They've talked to Josh. He doesn't know where she is. He thought that she might have been in Edmonton. He saw her briefly on the 27th and he went to bed, but he wasn't thinking anything until he found that the family hadn't heard from her. Erin reminds them all that when she's been feeling really overwhelmed or kind of depressed, she'll just shut off the world. And she did have a big audition a couple of days before that, so maybe she didn't get that audition. And her dad reminds them that there was a big snowstorm, the last that she'd been heard from. And Josh is feeling terrible because he says he kind of argued with her the night of the 27th when he last saw her, and she went out for a walk that night. to sort of think, and now he's thinking, well, what if something happened to her? So they're all kind of thinking terrible things that could have happened to her, and of course, none of them could stop thinking about that the last time, a few months prior to that, her dad had revealed to Nancy Hicks that Shannon had called Josh from a LRT transit station saying that she was thinking of jumping and wanted him to come and get her. So Aaron reached out to the Calgary Police Missing Persons Unit, and they did take it very seriously, but unlike me, who doesn't hear from her kids for 3 hours and immediately jumps to they've been murdered, the police were actually more concerned of some of the other scenarios. The big snowstorm that they'd have and the travel that she did along the highways, those feelings of being overwhelmed, maybe she had a shady audition, and then, of course, the unconventional marriage that they had. I mean, obviously, they had their eyes on Josh because of that fact, and he had been forthcoming about the argument and that they were kind of considering divorce, but also just because it's always the husband. But everyone was forthcoming about everything, the mix up at the theater date, the argument, the marriage, so no one's really hiding anything. And the police are also concerned that something bad has happened because it wasn't like her not to reach out to anyone, as in like anyone at all, even when she was feeling down. And there had been no bank transactions or social media posts from her. And they were also aware of the incident at the train station because Josh had called for the police help at that time, so they did have a record of it. So they held a press conference that was attended by her family, including Josh, her parents, and her siblings. Erin spoke about Shannon and pleaded for her to reach out if she could and for any information that might lead to her being found. There are actually no accurate data statistics on people that go missing and how many of those turn out to be homicides. But what data there is suggests that women are more likely to go missing as a result of violence than men. And when a person is missing for longer than a few days, the likelihood of homicide goes up because suicides can't hide their bodies and are usually found at some point, and going off grid for women is more likely to result in some contact with family at some point. The police interviewed a number of people, including some of the last guys that she dated and some of the last women that Josh had dated, to no avail. And of course, they interviewed Josh a number of times. His story never changed. They spoke briefly on the night of the 27th of November, and it was a kind of an argument, that not like a knockdown, drag out, more of a, why are your shoes by the door kind of argument. And she went out for a walk and he went to bed soon after that. And he figured that she came home later after he was asleep and left to go to Edmonton for work. And then that's where she was. He wasn't being shady or deceptive about anything. And he certainly wasn't on any of Shannon's family's radar as being involved. He felt terrible that the last time he saw her that they were kind of salty with each other, and if something bad had happened to her, he's just never going to forgive himself. And of course, jealousy wasn't an issue between the two of them. Only a short time after she disappeared, Josh called the police and told them that he'd just found her cell phone in a pair of Shannon's pants pocket. And that's when the first creeping thoughts of something sinister came up for everyone. I mean, these days, no one goes anywhere willingly without their phone, but they are hoping that this is going to be a major find. So they pull the records, and not just the records of all the phone calls and texts, but of the phone's locations as well. But there wasn't anything really helpful on the phone, like there was no angry or threatening texts, no unfamiliar locations, and had no plans to meet anyone around the time that she disappeared. But all activity did stop at 12:30 a.m. November 27th. But Detective Christina Witt, who worked the case, revealed to Crime Beat that there was one odd thing about the phone. There were no calls or texts after 12:30, but around 12 hours later than that, so on the afternoon of the 27th, the phone goes on what Christina refers to as a walkabout. It's amazing how detailed GPS can get these days. The phone goes out the back door of her house on Spiller Road and into the back alley and kind of paces around a little bit and then goes back in the back door of the house. The 27th was a Thursday, so maybe that's when she was getting ready to leave to wherever she was going and she forgot her phone. But the thing with the phone is just bugging Christina. No real reason, but something about it doesn't feel right. But there's no murder. There's just a girl gone missing who might just not want to be found or might have gone off distraught over something. Almost 6 months go by with no word from Shannon and the family becoming more and more convinced and grief-stricken that Shannon is probably no longer alive. And that is when Detective Christina Witt from Missing Persons kind of comes in. The file was transferred to her, and she picked up where the trail had gone cold. And she circles back to this phone activity and its little walkabout that it went on. Christina told Oxygen that originally Josh had said that he didn't recognize the phone until December 1st. Quote, that part of his story didn't make a whole lot of sense. People were calling and texting Shannon, but he said he didn't notice the ringing for that long of a period of time. And about that little walkabout the phone did, she said, it was almost like somebody was trying to show that she was alive and moving that phone around, just didn't move that phone far enough where it made sense. And this was leading her back to Josh, the last person that saw her, the man considering a divorce, the man that had argued with her just before she disappeared. I mean, it's not a huge leap to make. It's always the husband. And they had done a number of cursory searches of the Burgess home before. It was her residence after all. And Josh had always been pretty cooperative, and there was nothing found that looked out of the ordinary or didn't match with his story. But this time they decided that maybe if they showed up with a search warrant, it would rattle him a little bit. I mean, there's no body, so no evidence of a crime. So they're either going to find a lead or another dead end. I mean, what's the harm in trying? So on July 2nd, 2015, so it's about 7 months after her disappearance, they knock on Josh's door, this time armed with that search warrant. But he's not coming to the door. So Christina calls his cell phone and he answers and is kind of stalling at first, and then bursts out that he killed his wife, which is kind of unexpected. I guess not so much that he killed her, but that he admitted it just then. After some phone negotiations, he comes out of the house in his boxers covered in blood. It seems in his panic, he wasn't sure what to do, so he started cutting at his neck with a pocket knife, but not enough to sever any arteries, so he was treated for superficial wounds and taken to the police station to be interviewed. Police brought in cadaver dogs to the house and found three different locations. There was a retaining walls at the front of the house. There was two shovels that were leaning against the house and also on the rear porch. And when they dug up the front yard, they found Shannon. Josh said that back when they were going through their rough patch, which likely had to do with the LRT station issue, just some conjecture there, when they decided to close out the marriage and make it just the two of them, Josh didn't really do that. According to his sister Erin, she told Nancy Hicks that Shannon had found phone messages between him and his latest side girlfriend, and she told him to end it. He said he would, but he wanted to do it in person, but instead told the side girlfriend that he was planning on leaving Shannon and to be with her. And Shannon found out. She was furious and obviously very hurt, and Shannon was making plans to move out. Josh told the police that on the night of the November 27th, he had come home and she was there. He asked her if they could have makeup sex, and they did. Only there had been some kind of miscommunication, and Shannon thought that what he had asked for was breakup sex. When she realized that Josh was thinking they had made up, she got very upset and started telling him exactly what she thought of him, including that she regretted marrying him and that she was disgusted by him. Josh says he just wanted her to stop talking, so he put his hand over her mouth and nose so she bit him, and that's when he got on top of her and started to strangle her. He said, I killed her with my hands, and my hands got tired. I used a belt. Yes, he got tired from strangling his wife, so he pulled out his belt from his pants that he was wearing and used that instead. And after she was dead, he put her body in a Rubbermaid garbage pail, pulled it out to the back deck of the house, and after a few months, when the ground thawed enough, he buried her in the front yard and covered her body with dirt and some branches because he said, I chose my lawn because I just didn't want her to leave. So obviously he was charged with her murder, second-degree murder that is, and a couple of other details came out about Josh's activities during the time that he sat knowing exactly where Shannon was and letting her family agonize for months over what had happened to her. He kept his online dating profile on OkCupid open and active under the username JustJoshingUA, which he accessed as late as May 9th of 2014, which was 6 months into her disappearance. In his profile, he says he is looking for new friends, short-term dating, mostly non-monogamous, and under the drug section he had selected sometimes, and is looking for women between the ages of 18 and 45. He had a total of 5 pictures posted, including ones with Shannon in it. So kind of a douche. He is currently serving a life sentence and eligible to apply for parole in 2027.